First off, I appreciate all of y'all for coming. Honestly, this is like 7 times the amount of people I expected to be here at 11 o'clock on Saturday, so I appreciate that. I'd like to definitely give appreciation to Lindsey Mill and the Arkansas Times for convincing themselves that I should be up here to be a visionary. I also like to thank the Clinton School for hosting this event and thank my parents for making me. Appreciate y'all. It's my parents right there. Love them. Cool. So, I titled my talk today, it's going to be called I Am Not Them, a story of a brother becoming what he once was, right? So I am not them, a story of a brother becoming what he once was. So I know Lindsey wrote like a nice blurb on like the website, and I'm really not going to talk about that too much, but it's going to all tie in together. So I'm up here now so he can't reject my campaign. So I'm going to start it off like this. So besides the clever ploy to have y'all connect with me by showing a baby picture, I show this because at this point in my life, I was at a period where I really felt I was that dude. So it was kind of like when I moved, I felt I exuded love. Everybody loved me. When I walked, the world conformed to me. I was just really a great guy. I had no problems. My mom used to tell me stories about how I used to dance and put on shows and just all types of stuff of how great I was, right? And like any parent, I believe if you ask my mom, maybe not my dad, if you ask my mom, she would tell you about how I was one of the smartest children, as well as the fact of how cute I was. Now, in retro, I probably was like maybe the 4th smartest person in my house, and by the looks of that shirt, like, I wasn't that cute. Like I'm like definitely not unattractive child, but you know, I'm not the child that you put in the Sears Roebuck campaign. So it's kind of like, you know, but at that time, you couldn't tell me anything. I knew I was a beautiful child. So what I'm gonna talk about today are the 3 things that I think I encountered in my life, and I think what a lot of people encounter in life that helped them to, that forced them to lose their cool. So kind of what I'm gonna talk about today is the 3 enemies of that child's cool right there. So the first one I'm gonna talk about is life. By life, I mean situations, events, occurrences that occur in our life that we have no control over but cause us to think of ourselves differently. And it's kind of weird because I think if I was up here right now and I got cut when I was bleeding profusely, like someone would call the ambulance, my mom would start panicking. Like basically I would go to the hospital, probably get some stitches and get healed up. But it seems like especially in westernized society, in America, we overlook tons of times about the psychological and the mental wounds we occur, especially as children, even if they're minor, and we kind of just overlook them and told them that time heals all wounds. So I'm gonna tell you a few stories about minor/major details that kind of like threw me off track. The first one, a real small one, right? So I think I was in 3rd grade, and there was a female girl named Jennifer Huey, and I loved her. Now, the problem was she didn't know that she should love me back yet. So with Jennifer, I got her phone number over the summer, talked to her all summer, and God worked it out for us to be in the same homeroom for 4th grade, right? So I took about a month, got my little strategic game plan. I've always been kind of strategic, and I timed my steps to meet her right at the door, and I was like, Jennifer, will you go with me? You know, I try to be more advanced in the circle, yes or no. I was kind of before my time, right? So she responded by, Sean, I would like to go with you. I had a girlfriend, my first girlfriend, right? So whenever I get like real high or real low, I just get like real quiet and absorbed, and I don't talk, I just get real to myself. So all the kids went out to play kickball, and I was just sitting on the ledge, just like chilling on cloud 42. And then I guess my peripheral was cut off because her best friend Constance came running over, and she was like, Sean, Jennifer was just playing. She would never go with you. And I looked at her and I was like, that's what's up. And I went from the top of the world to the bottom like in 0.3 seconds, right? And I just sat there, and all the kids went back to class, and I was just sitting on that ledge, and like the teacher had to come get me, and I was struck. Now, that story's gonna come play back a little bit further in the story. So that's like one little life story I really had no control of that kind of threw me off track. Another one was, I was actually born in Freehold, New Jersey. Now, Freehold, New Jersey, there was, in my school, it was predominantly white. And by predominantly, I mean there was 4 black kids in the school between kindergarten and the 7th grade. And 2 of them were my sisters. So if you do the math, my mom populated 75% of the black population at Freehold School. Besides that was my church, and my church was all black. Now, the thing was, I didn't really pay attention or care. I just mingled with whoever I mingled with. Like I said, I was that dope brother right there. It didn't really matter. When I moved to Pine Bluff, things were slightly different. I don't know if any of y'all been to Pine Bluff or spent, shout out to the Bluff, or word to Kaylin. I don't know if any of y'all spent too much time in Pine Bluff. It was slightly different in terms of, I would say, I guess, race relations. So I was at, like Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, I usually be with like my black friends. And then Tuesday, Wednesday, maybe like one weekend day, I'd be with my white friends. So I guess it was Thursday, and we were standing there, and I was with a lot of my white compadres, and we were throwing rocks at the girls. And there was one girl in particular named Angie, who I was trying to hit with a rock. You know, I was trying to show her that I liked her by, you know, hitting her with a rock, right? And so what happened was, Angie, out of all the people, she said, "Sean, you stop throwing rocks." Now, initially, I wanted to convince myself she said it's because she liked me too, and that was her, like, you know, reverse psychology way of doing it. But as I looked around the other kids I was standing around, the only difference between me and them was my skin color. And after that moment, that was the moment I guess I discovered race and racism. And after that moment, I definitely started observing a lot of occurrences that had happened in the past in my life, a lot of things that happened in my present, and all things in the future kind of were viewed from that moment on with a different veil, okay? There's some other stories I had. I'll skip over a few of them. I'm gonna go to this last one because it's the pivotal one, right? So this one was, I had, around 13 years old, I had acne. Now, let me clarify this. I had, in my life, I've only seen 2 people face to face with worse skin than mine. So I had a situation, it was called nodular acne, and it's kind of like these, I call them like super bumps, like they're immune to everything but like kryptonite, and they just kind of like form all over my face. And at the average, I had like 12 of these things on my face. And besides that, like my oil buildup was so much, it would just run down my face, and like I had to carry a towel and like bat my face sometimes. And in addition to that, when I would bat my face, a lot of times it would bleed. So I would be in the middle of class and have to leave the classroom, or I would be in different situations and have to just kind of excuse myself. But besides that, people kind of interacted with me different. A lot of people, when they looked me in my face, it was sometimes so distinct that they would like walk around me. I would hear talk to my face and kind of like sometimes joking, as well as talk behind my back from my family members. I heard things that were said to them and from my friends. So, you know, needless to say, as a 13-year-old, you're a pretty influential child, a child that's susceptible to a lot of influences. So it crushed me, right? Because, you know, I thought I was that dude, and everybody was telling me that I was not that guy, right? All because of this extreme skin condition I had that actually borderlined on, I guess you could almost call it like a deformity. So what I did was I got ostracized, but besides that, I also pulled back a lot to myself and kind of just went into my shell. So for the first few months, I definitely would say I was just kind of crushed and sad and like spent a lot of time by myself. But then I kind of just started like observing or analyzing why I was being treated this way. So I started analyzing the fact that a lot of it was based on just a superficial condition, and not just for myself, but a lot of people base a lot of their worth on who they assume to hold power, or who they assume the prettiest is, or who they assume, or who has the money, when a lot of stories get overlooked like that. Because I knew I had a great story to tell, and I knew I was a pretty good dude, but nobody cared, and let alone would even really speak to me because of what they just viewed on my skin. So I kind of pulled back. That was like the first layer I discovered. As I pulled back a little bit more, I started seeing how much of these, I guess you could say, issues with people and their perceptions affected the rest of the world. So I started seeing a lot of the connectedness in the world of how we kind of like ignore a lot of our biases and issues, and how it affects other people and affects people in ways that we don't even understand. Then I peeled back another layer, and I saw that actually I was a part of this problem as well. There was many things that I was doing in my life that, although they weren't necessarily making fun of somebody because of how they looked, they fell in that same category. So around that time, I decided that I was not going to be those people. I decided I'd try to set myself to a higher standard in the fact of not only care about people sincerely, so, you know, when you say how you doing, not just say it as a matter of circumstance, but actually wonder how that person's doing. But it became a lifestyle habit in somewhat seeking out the individual greatness in everybody, and also becoming a listener and becoming separate from the pack that just makes these assumptions off of superficiality. So that was life for me. That was kind of a pivotal point in my life. So it's kind of one of those blessings in disguise, even though that acne was no blessing about it. But it was one of those things that from that, my dad's chuckling. So it was one of those situations that was what I got from it. So I won't necessarily say I needed that to come to that understanding, but it was definitely a major point in becoming a pivot in my life. So first enemy was life. The second enemy, I would say, is fears. And fears definitely feeds directly off the life aspect, but fears for me came into perspective the most during I think it was my freshman and sophomore year. So at that time, I discovered I had 3 major fears. First one was I was scared of water. Like, Like, a lot of people, a lot of times, and they ask me if I ever failed a class, I tell them I've never failed a class, but I failed like 3 swimming lessons. Like, I understood when you hold on to the side and kick your feet, but as soon as you let go, that just does not make logical sense to me. So I never learned how to swim. And like, it was so bad I would hyperventilate under like the shower, right? The second fear I had was I was scared to talk to any woman who I deemed as attractive or interested in. And you know the reason for that was? Jennifer Huey. She ruined me in the 3rd grade. And it was still playing on me in my life right then. So the second fear was actually talking to any female of interest. My third fear actually was, which is kind of crazy now, it was talking or being the center of attention or talking in front of a public audience, right? And so what was weird was I always had like a cool like sense of humor and did like class clown stuff that, you know, my mom disapproved of. And a lot of times it would get a crowd, but as soon as I noticed the eyes on me, I would shut down and like hide. So this third fear came into play just to let you know how bad it was. My freshman year, I took a class. It was mostly seniors in this class. And the seniors took it because it was an easy A. I took it because I thought I might come up on a senior girlfriend. My plan didn't work. But we had this presentation, and the presentation, I teamed up with another senior, and we had to do our final presentation. I had an A in the class so far. He got up there, he did his presentation, whoop-de-whoop-de-whoop. It was good. I got up there for like 30 seconds, started talking, and then like everybody was just looking, like, you know how y'all doing? Like everybody was just looking, and I just got like, first like my mouth got dry, then I literally started sweating, then my tongue felt like it got fat. I started hitting with the and then so literally my knees gave out from under me, and they had to sit me down and start like calming me down by fanning me and everything. You never knew this story, Mom. I see you covering your mouth. Right. So they had to sit me down and like start fanning me to calm me down. Now, if anybody talks to somebody who was there at that time, they may say I was crying. That was sweat. Like I did not cry. That was just sweat from the eyes coming out. But you know, that was just kind of the situation I was in. After that situation occurred, I basically had to take a look at myself, and I was on my spiritual game, and I was like, you know, don't fear anything but God, and even that kind of fear is more of a respect type thing. So I was wanted to get over all these fears, and I figured the best way to do it was just to jump out there and do something. So the only thing I could really do was there was an upcoming talent show. And in this talent show, at this time, I really had no talent whatsoever. Like, you do not want to hear me sing. Also, I had written a few verses, and a lot of my friends had rap, but I had never really wanted to be a rapper, found nothing interesting about it other than the fact of just writing and recording a few songs. So I got up there on this talent show, stood up on the stage, and did this rap, and it sucked. Like, it was horrible. Like, my rap was, like, extremely bad. But at this time, after I did the show, nobody like came up there and like my mom didn't get kidnapped, or like, you know, nobody like beat me down or stole my lunch money, and nobody like teased me afterwards. Like my fears that I thought might happen, none of them occurred. So I was like, that wasn't that bad, you know, let's try it again. So I did another rap. This one it sucked too, like the rap sucked too. But something strange happened this time, in the fact that when I performed, I actually slightly enjoyed it a little bit, which was kind of weird. I started enjoying the fact of like the performance aspect. So I started doing more and more just different shows and activities and performing, and something strange occurred where in this place where I once had a fear, I actually found a passion and a love, and like that passion and love solidified in becoming a hip hop artist. Now, it's kind of funny, a lot of people ask me all the time when they find out I go to Stanford, they're like, you went to Stanford and you rap? And I'm kind of laughing, I'm like, if I didn't go to Stanford, I never would have been a rapper. So it's kind of like, you know, sorry, Mom and Dad, it was kind of, you should have told me to go to Harvard or something like that, right? So anyway, through this fear, I found a passion, and as time progressed, before my senior year, I was, the reason I chose the name Epiphany, it kind of hit me like I would rather wake up doing what I love every day, in addition to the fact I felt spiritually led to go into rap because I felt it could be a game changer and influential way past just myself becoming any accolades of celebrity or just making music. So it was very much so a passionate choice, and very much so a kind of a spiritual choice of why I became a rapper. So that was my enemy number 2, was fear, and that was the pivotal point of my fear. Now, the next 10 years, as I lead to the third enemy, the next 10 years was interesting, a series of kind of ups and downs, highs and lows. You know, I had great shows. I had shows with less people than that table right there. I had shows where it was like, you know, Lindsay even wrote about it at the Times, and I had shows where like people booed and my mom got scared and never came back for another 3 years. I had my friend won a reality show and I was on national TV, and then I had a studio situation where the studio got shut up and I had to start watching my back because it got it on some rap beef. The Stanford dude was actually involved in like real rap beef, and my friend Sean over there was trying to get Debo status on people. So it was like one of these like highs and lows, great to like accolades and great lows, but overall it was a nice progression. But I hit a point where I was like, although this is cool, like, and I'm enjoying it, at the same time, I'm not where I should be. Not from other people's perspective, but from my personal standpoint of where I should be. And I understood and accepted the fact a lot of it was because I made a lot of mistakes and didn't correct them soon enough. So what happened was about 4 years ago, I got a Facebook. It wasn't a call. Facebook was like, hey, I'm over in Europe. We want you to come over here and teach. And I hit them back like, this is my homegirl from college 4 years ago. And I hit her back like, hey, if y'all paying for it, cool. So I expected her to call me. 3 years later, she shot me another Facebook message like, hey, I'm in Banjul, Gambia. We want you to come over here and teach and perform. Shot her back the same. I think I probably just copied and pasted the last message like, hey, man, if y'all paying for it, cool. So I had no faith in this whatsoever. But within a week's time, we had spoken on the phone. Within a month's time, it was myself and a producer I brought in named Ferocious, and we were signed up to go to Banjul, Gambia to operate on 5 different things. The first was to teach hip-hop culture to a lot of the students over in Banjul and Gambia. Another one was to teach takeaways from hip-hop culture that they could use in their everyday life. Another one was create music with the native artists. Another one was to work with the creatives to just talk about more of the existential philosophical aspects of art. And the 5th aspect was to have this really, really dope concert that was sponsored by this cell phone company up there. And I'm gonna show you a few pictures real quick of some of my trip. These are some of the schools I went to. That's me in the back, and that was some of the schools. That's me and some of the students. I like to point out that that's actually not the design of the shirt. It was just really, really hot, like in the middle of the, and I didn't know about undershirts, so that's why they had like the multicolor, because it kind of hides the sweat. Another class, that's the same class I'm teaching, talking about hip-hop culture. And one more picture. That was another school we went to, and each one, we went to about 10 different schools and just interact with all the students. So I just grabbed a few pictures for y'all to see. Now, at this time, it was crazy. Like, it was just a crazy experience being overseas. I've been overseas several times before, but this was my my second non-tourist trip. I did a mission trip like way, way back in the day, but this is like the first time as a grown man doing a non-touristy trip. It was just an amazing experience. Now, I want to point out one picture in particular, actually. So I like to highlight this picture. So just so you know, that's a billboard with me on it, and that's me standing by this picture, all right? The reason this picture resonated with me when I saw this billboard, and keep in mind, like on the their streets, like they just had tons of Epiphany billboards up for this major concert we were doing. So the reason this picture resonated with me was for a few reasons. The first was, you gotta understand, like on this picture, I was gonna do a concert for what they were predicting to be 10,000 people, when previously that same boy was scared to talk in front of 6. So it's kind of just like a humbling experience and also just an awe-inspiring one. And then taking it even a step further, they have like my picture up there to the top left, and even though they use good lighting and probably a lot of Photoshop, once that same guy, people wouldn't even look at it in the face, and now they deemed it worthwhile to actually put me on a billboard. So even though as I glazed over that lightly, it was amazing to me because it was like, there was no way in my wildest dreams when I was sitting in all these fears and being timid that I ever would come to this point, not from the standpoint of doing the show, but just from the standpoint of overcoming so much personally in my life to reach that point. And so 2 things hit me. One was, of course, what a lot of people in my face say is like, God is good. Like a lot of how he worked it out and helped me get to that point. And I agree with that, but there was another level that I think a lot of times people don't harp on, is the fact of, it wasn't like I just hit these points and then the next 10 years I just sat back and was like, yeah, man, whatever, blah, blah, blah. And then I popped up on a billboard. It was more so like the work that was done when encountering these issues to get by it, right? So it's kind of like the whole, I guess, wherever the divine hand was, and as well as like the work it took to overcome that. But then the third point hit me was that like, now this is just kind of the beginning. Like this is actually square one, because the stuff that personally, I guess went through to help shape this was not, it helped shape me as a person, but now it's time to really get to work. You know what I'm saying? It's kind of like these were the things I had problems with that I needed to go through and overcome. And even though understanding that I'm not over all my fears, I'm not over all the ways I was wounded by life, but now it's time to actually get to work and become what I need to become. And this is why I actually encountered my third enemy, actually. And the third enemy I realized was myself. And I say myself, understanding myself builds off the fears, builds off the life. But I say myself because at this point, I had reached a level of comfort and a level of comfortable perspective. So it's kind of like I had formed my own little niche in my own hip hop culture. So although it wasn't this superstar status, it still was very much so respected. I've become comfortable financially a lot better than where I was. And in perspective-wise, people who once kind of doubted or like, what are you doing, now understood or thought they understood where I was. And then I also realized like I was comfortable in the fact that I kind of had somewhat of a routine, knew what I was doing, and knew what I was trying to do next. But the problem was when I say it myself is I could best explain it by the story I call like the 15 widget story. And I say it by the fact of, say if you had a job and your one part of the job is to build 15 widgets, right? That's what you sign up for. Every day you're supposed to build 15 widgets. Now when you start working, you start realizing like some people build 8 widgets, some people build 9 widgets, some build 6, some do 10, but nobody builds 15 widgets. So when you come to this job and you build like 12 widgets, everybody think that's dope, because it's kind of like, man, how are you doing all those widgets? You know, everybody loves it and accepts it and looks up to it and kind of gives it, kind of holds it in a high estimation. But at the same time, you kind of can get caught up in the fact like, man, that's cool, I'm building 12 widgets, people like that, but you forget the fact your job was never to build 12 widgets, it was to build 15. But the scary part is the difference between 12 and 15, if you continue to work harder, then people start turning against you, because it's kind of like, now that they have you in your comfort zone, their comfort zone, when you start working past that, a lot of people start looking at you different. You start becoming funny acting or start pushing agendas that weren't part of their agenda that they had for you, right? And so I realized I was at a point where I was cool like, and I was doing cool like things and doing good things, but I wasn't quite pushing myself where I needed to be. And I realized I had to get over myself and start becoming what I need to become. So after that, actually, I went on sabbatical. So I came back and went on sabbatical for 6 weeks, because that's about how much money I had to support it. And on that sabbatical, I had one goal, which was to understand a healthier, more sustainable lifestyle. That was like my one goal from it. And I had different talks, read different books, went different places, and I came out with my life purpose. And my life purpose was to help create and connect sustainable communities through de-evolution of mindset and tool building. And that sounds like a lot, and it's very much so an overarching goal of kind of everything I do. And what came from that immediately was I wanted to do different type of projects. So I kind of founded 5 pillars for every new project that I do. One was it has to be rooted in entertainment, because at the end of the day, I love entertaining. I love making music, so rooted in entertainment was one of them. Another aspect was it had to have a narrative, cohesive aspect. I like stories, so I wanted to basically, and I feel stories are powerful in terms of educating and entertaining, so I wanted to build a narrative aspect to it. Another part was it had to challenge both the viewer and the creator. So I didn't want to do something just because it's easy to do and people would like it. I wanted to challenge myself, as well as the fact of the people who view it, if they wanted to peel back the entertainment layers, they could see layers of it that actually could help perhaps impact them. And the last 2 was, one, it had to be sustainable financially, because energy doesn't care about your vision and you still got to pay them regardless. And the last one was I wanted to be part of a sustainable communities, like help create sustainable communities in charitable aspects. And from that came Global Kids. What Global Kids is out of New York, and for myself, what we're trying to do is called Global Kids Arkansas. It's a 4-week program that we're working to bring here in 2014, and it's for underprivileged, at-risk youth who are interested in global affairs. First 4 weeks, the first 2 weeks of the program will be here, and it's an intense academic curriculum. And the last 2 weeks, they take them overseas, and they actually continue to work in environments overseas within that curriculum. That's kind of a real small summary, I guess, what Global Kids is. The reason I found it as powerful was, in terms of the international aspect, other than tragic events or negative activities. So I found like going over overseas non-touristy trip is one of the quickest ways to actually have a life-changing event. So you know, a lot of people, when someone passes away, they have a tragic event, then they have a moment of clarity and switch up. But going overseas, when you come back, you look at yourself differently, you look at other people differently, how you interact with your environment, and how you actually impact the rest of the world. So I really wanted to help create the system of taking youth overseas who are already driven, but don't have the opportunity to see such things or have such experiences overseas. And then when they come back, they're required to either take part in a community building event from what they learned or what they're passionate about, or create their own. And so this is, I guess you could say, my strive in building my 15 widgets. This is where I kind of have a slight closing / challenge for everybody in the building. So it hits me in like 3 different ways. The first one is very simple. If anybody's interested in Global Kids and wants to help or support, learn more about it, please sign up. I have my computer over here. I can shoot you some more information. We need help from the grassroots levels to corporate solicitation or just working events, whatever it may be. We definitely want your information. I'd love to tell you more about it. Other one is from an artistic standpoint, if there's any creatives in the building, I love chopping it up, and maybe you provide a perspective that I'm missing right now, or maybe you actually have a service that we could talk about. And the third one is the challenge to just kind of, I guess, do something. And originally I felt like I was supposed to come up here and talk about my ideas about building these sustainable communities and all these different aspects, but I kept on going back to those 3 enemies. And the reason is because I feel that's kind of like the first key. Like, there's so many systems created that sound good on paper, but the problem is the people kind of who create them kind of taint it real quickly. So I really feel like if we create a system, almost a feedback loop to kind of continually improve ourselves, it actually improves these systems. So when they come to this point of nowadays where a lot of systems are faltering because they've been around so long and they're faltering under their own weight, the people involved actually could check themselves and see, like, a lot of times it's our biases that are keeping these systems from actually doing the job that they're doing. So for myself, a lot of this building this sustainable community, or healthy sustainable community, really starts with the individual and kind of deconstructing themselves and being aware of how they can improve themselves as well as improve the group. So one of my challenges is, like, whatever life situation, fear, or how you're standing in the way of yourself, like, take some time, look at it, and like attack it, like do something to get over it. And I say that for the most selfish of reasons, because not only does it help yourself, but it very much so helps us. Like, the world needs it and time's kind of running out, right? That's not apocalyptic, I'm just kind of saying. But, and that this other reason is kind of like just do something outwardly. Like, there's tons and tons of causes out here. Like, and the fact of the matter is, a lot of people think, like, when I get to this point, I can go back and give something when I get to this point. But it's kind of one of these, there's always something to provide somewhere, and there's so many causes that you could be part of that need your help in some shape, form, or fashion. And if you don't like any of them, create another one. Like, just do something. Like, we honestly just need it. And lastly, I like to close by reading this poem that actually I read like 10 years ago, and it didn't really, I saw the insight and how profound it was, but it didn't resonate with me until my friend Amber had me read it recently for a class we were working on, and I'm gonna put it up and read it real quick. Cool. And it says, I know all y'all are literate, but I'm gonna still read it though. It says, our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. It is our light, not our darkness, that most frightens us. We ask ourselves, who am I to be brilliant, gorgeous, talented, fabulous? Actually, who are you not to be? You are a child of God. Your playing small does not serve the world. There's nothing enlightening about shrinking so that other people won't feel insecure around you. We are all meant to shine as children do. We were born to make manifest the glory of God that is within us. It is not just in some of us, it is in everyone. And as we let our light shine, we unconsciously give other people permission to do the same. As we're liberated from our own fear, our presence automatically liberates others. And I like to point out the part where it says, as children do, because as I said, the title of my presentation today was A Brother Struggling to Become the Brother That He Once Was. I'm getting back to that young dude that understood that he had the power to create whatever he wanted to create. And that's all I got, and I appreciate y'all's time. I suppose to ask, are there any questions? I skipped a lot of pictures of the shows in Mauritius and of Seychelles, but are there any questions? Yes, sir.
Let me get you a mic.
This is going to go back to the fear aspect. This is one thing. I do a lot of work with kids, 3rd graders through 12th graders, and this is what I see pretty common, fear of success. Did you ever have this fear? Can you talk a little bit about it?
Yeah, well, it's kind of funny. So the fear, I have a friend that I perform with in the band, and actually a quick plug for myself. Next week, there's a free show at the Riverfront Amphitheater at 3:30. Y'all come out, it's free. Enough of self-promo. To answer your question, yes. Another quick story. There was I was in SPSC, which is like this engineering group in college, and we were going to, they had like this big event like once a year that everybody goes to, and they had this like pugil fighting setup, you know, like those big Q-tips, and so it was like the students could go against each other, and there was this one guy who literally like beat 30 people like in a row, and so like everybody was hyped to beat this dude, and I finally got up there and we was going for it, and we was kind of going tit for tat, and then he slipped, and I could have like landed it on his head and beat him, but I didn't want to for a quick instant because I knew that then I would be the man. Right? And so in this quick like blink processing, I understood that like I didn't want those expectations placed upon me to be, expectations of others placed on me to be now that ultimate warrior. And it barely tapped him on the head, and then he beat me. And I was kind of like happy because still everybody was like, oh man, you did so well, but I didn't become that leader. So I would say I kind of use that story as a reference point. A lot of points in my life, I shied from leadership just because, man, there's a lot of expectations. There's a lot of, it's one thing when you don't have expectations and you exceed them every time. It's something else when you have a lot of expectations and you actually have to meet them. So for myself, it was just kind of, that fell into the fear/myself aspect and being like, I'm really not playing this game for others' perceptions. So at the end of the day, like it's very much so a mindset of mine that I'm gonna go for it all. It's just gonna be, it is what it is. So it was, and in terms of practicality, because I like kind of giving practical advice, I then put myself in situations where I would feel awkward and where I would have to be a leader in those situations, because it's one thing to have it in your mind, it's something else to actually do it. So I just put myself in situations where I would have to like face that leadership role head on. And I'm not sure if that answers your question, but that's all I got. One more question. Great.
So what would you say with somebody who's going through what you went through at the time that you were going through your revelations? Like, what I mean is, do you grow into the person that you are now, or does someone have to tell you? Does someone have to kickstart that?
I would say it's kind of both, right? So one thing I think people don't do enough is spend enough time by themselves in terms of like self-reflection. Like we stay so busy and involved with talking to so many people, and there's so many means of communication now between like Facebook, telephones, and Twitter and all this stuff. So for me, it always comes to the point of disconnecting for a little bit. And even though disconnecting might be just like, for this day, I'm really not really gonna talk to anybody or have these conversations. I'm gonna spend some time with myself and think, right? And then from that, normally I will come up with a rough idea of what I should do next. A lot of times it's like have conversations with certain people. Like it might be like have a conversation with a family member or a friend, or it might be certain books that I read. It's just after I take that time alone, I then kind of just try different methods to overcome. And also understanding that there's nothing that you're going through in this world that's new, right? So it's just somebody's always been through what you're going through, and maybe they're not getting hit exactly the same way because you're a unique being, but there's some way and there's some knowledge out there for people to impart upon you. You just gotta know where to look for it. So Over the years, I built myself like a strong team, and by team, I don't just mean like promo team to go throw out flyers, but people that check me all the time, or like if I'm not doing something over time, they're not scared to let me know, like, hey man, why aren't you doing this? Like I have parents and sisters that will like question a lot of my activities, not because they're critiquing it, but because they're actually doing it out of love and trying to make sure I'm doing as best as I can in those activities. So spend some time, as well as like get the right people around you, and by right people, they're definitely not yes men, people that aren't scared to let you know when you might need some help, and then just seek. Appreciate y'all.